and we have 9 to come in. So here they come. Ooh, people. This is very exciting.
People.
Hello, everybody. Just waiting for people to get settled. Even more people arriving. This is so interesting. Here we are, letting everybody in. There we are. So, thank you all for being so punctual. Well done, everybody. Okay, still a few more. So what I think could be great, Stephanie, if I'll let them in as people in as you're talking, and if you wouldn't mind letting any latecomers in when I am, we can share the jobs.
All right.
So, even more. This is so cool. Thank you all for joining us, whatever your time zone. And I can see people from quite a range of time zones. So well done for making the effort. This is all about how you can get the most out of being a presenter and really optimizing the message that you're going to be sharing at HypnoThoughts. And what we're going to do today, we're going to start with some awesome info from Stephanie, who she won't say it herself, but she knows everything that you'll need to know about HypnoThoughts ever. So if you have any doubts at any point, then go and see Stephanie when you're there. And if she doesn't know, she'll find out. I've never heard of her not being able to answer a question one way or another. So with that very mild introduction, Stephanie, would you like to tell us a little bit more about Hoover and all of the other things that can really help presenters?
Yes, I would. So thank you all for joining. This is great. I know that this has been asked for many years, and Kate so graciously offered it too. So I'm glad that we found a time that works for us and that you all took the time to join us. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to go over a quick couple of things, and then if you have questions, you can ask them, or Kate will also be covering it, some of them more in depth, a little bit later too. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is our Hoover app. I'm not sure if you all know about it, but I've taken a lot of time to upload all the information to Hoover. However, you all have the ability to go in and add any picture that you want. So this is great for me because if you decide to change your picture or anything like that, you can go in and change it yourself, which is just freeing, right? So you can do that. You can also tweak your bio if you'd like to. We ask that you don't change the title. You can change the description if you want to, but just don't change the title without running it by us first. Also, we don't like any of your credentials after your name or before your name, because we try to have it an equal playground for everyone. So that's kind of that. If you have trouble logging into Hoover, you might be using the wrong email that you sent to us in your spreadsheet. So just send me a quick message and we'll get that all worked out. You should not need to use a code. Using a code creates havoc and duplicates everything in the back. So I try to avoid that as much as possible. So I'll put in the chat, I will put the link to the Hoover app so you can download it in Google Play or your Apple. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was Michael DeShalit. I don't know if you all know him, but he has graciously offered to let presenters who are, this is mostly for booth people, but if you have a booth and you need to ship books or MP3, whatever you need for your booth, you can ship it to Michael DeShalit. So again, you can either message him on Facebook or just message me and I'll get you his address and things like that, because there's a couple parameters around that as well. But you know, it's like 120 in Las Vegas right now. And he graciously, he and his wife, Billy, let us take over their garage for about 3 or 4 weeks in this time of year. So it's super nice of him to help us as well. And then also, you all will have a volunteer in your room. That volunteer should be there when you arrive. Typically, Mariana will have them arrive 15 minutes before their shift, and they will go into the room, make sure you have, markers if you need them, make sure the chairs are in order and all of that. And those volunteers are there to, one, keep you on track so that you start and end at the right time. And two, just to kind of help you. So they have signs that will say 10, she's in charge, so she actually knows this part, but 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute morning, and then also like speak louder, just little prompts for you to help you, to do that. As always, we are going to be recording using Fleetwood again this year. So they will be there to kind of mic you up. And then you will get that recording of your talk about, I always like to say, give them a month just for time, but you'll get that recording. They email it to you. And so you'll have that and you can use that for any promotional or anything you want to do with it. So pop it up on YouTube, whatever you want to do. So that's kind of what I'm going to go through right now. And then I might just chime in when Kate says something that reminds me of another tip. And I am always available. So if you have a question, I'd rather have you ask me the question prior to the conference to at the conference. We have over 600 people registered right now, and registrations are coming in every day. So I think we had 5 over the weekend. So anyway, I'm always happy to answer any questions that you have.
I think we have a question from Daniel. Daniel, would you like to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So just to make sure, I was a little bit late. Here in the app, Uva, it's asking me for all these interests, affiliations, educations, location, resume, etc. Which is the part I need to worry about and fill in?
You know what? I might talk to you afterwards, because
okay.
You can put as much information as you want or as little information as you want. The main thing is it's really good to have a picture because people like pictures. And then, just fill in the basics, if you want to put everything in, that's fine too. But again, you don't have to. We just want the basics so that people can, see what you're about. And also in Whova, people have the ability to, and I'm going to be putting out a video about this, but people have the ability to make their own schedule within the conference. So they mark the little agenda button. So they get reminders of when your talk is, which is really cool. So that can be helpful as well. So, but yeah, for right now, fill in what you feel comfortable with. But we do like a picture just because that's important.
So the picture could be enough.
Yes, if you just want the picture, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Lydia, we have a question from you as well.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good to see you both. So just a couple quick questions. I know you mentioned the prices are going up on July 4th. Is that our workshop price? I can't remember this. We submitted this so long ago. Was it the workshop prices and Hypno Thoughts or just Hypno Thoughts on July 4th?
Right now, we're kind of thinking we might extend the pre-post a little bit longer, but the conference price is going up to $6.99. And then most likely we will be raising the workshop prices as well.
Do you know, like, did we set that price after July 4th when we talked? I just want to let my list know how much it's going up.
Yes. So if you look at your contract, I can email you separately too, but if you look at your contract, there's a pricing rate. So you submitted your price, And then there was a, 20% off and then a 10% off.
Okay. Yeah.
And then final price.
Yeah. Would you mind sending me what I put in for that? I just don't remember. I just want to let my list know how much it's going up after July 4th.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I'll resend your contract to you.
Okay, thanks. And then my other question was do you guys know any good ways of marketing on Whova? Because obviously this is a better, this seems a lot more engaged than even the group. Is there any recommendations you have? I don't want to just go through and spam everybody through message.
Right. It got a little crazy last year. So what I would, obviously the more you introduce yourself, the more your people see you, the more they'll recognize you and want to go to your class. So I would say, you can start topics on Whova. You can, I wouldn't, obviously, on Whova, you could go crazy and post every day. And I'm not sure that kind of clogs things up. But certainly post that you, when you're going to be there or where you're going to be during the conference. I don't think you have a booth, but if you have a booth, you can obviously say that and things like that. But, I know that there are a couple of people who are saying that their groups are meeting. So I know the stage hypnotists are doing a lunchtime. And then I think Mike Mandel's people, always get together. So if you want to say, I'd love to chat with you, meet me, and you could even set a time that you wanted to be somewhere,
How, when you say post, what do you mean by posting? Because the only way I see, the only sort of promotion, when it says promote my session, it just opens up one of these to share to social media.
Okay, yeah, because that's for promoting your session. So, and I can do a separate one on Whova because I don't want to take too much of Kate's time. But if you go to community, right? You can go to community and you can do meetups and virtual meets. You can also do, I still have polls, there's a whole bunch of, there's ride sharing, so there's a lot of different topics that people have posted there.
Huh. Okay. These are just like a social media post, basically.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, super. As we go through, if you have got any questions, feel free to either pop your hand up or pop them into the chat as seems appropriate. So I'm going to give you some of the tips that I found really useful over the years. Now you might be wondering why it's me that's talking about this rather than many of the other presenters, or many of whom have a lot of experience. Might be that I really love doing conference presentations. I think it's one of the most fun and rewarding things that I do. So I'm a little bit of a conference presenting junkie and I've got a bit of a track record of doing them. And I've learned on the job. I actually have a book out, and it's not a plug, but it's credibility, hopefully. Powerful Hypnosis Presentations, the Hypno Demo Approach. And I developed a system to remind people about the different components. So what I've done is I've distilled down some of the elements today into a little bit about what to avoid, some tips for preparing, some tips for presenting, even some tips for profiting from the whole thing. Let me start though. Oh, let me just give you an idea. My biggest talk is 1,100 people. And my first talk was 400. And for my first talk, I put a lot of the tips from this into practice. I prepared. I knew my presentation inside and out. It was actually a risk management talk. And I was staying at the hotel where the conference was. And it was a bit weird. I've never seen it done before, but they were having the speakers sit on stage until their talk. That in itself is a bit odd. So I turned up on the day went and had breakfast really early, anticipating I might get a little bit excited, my refrain for nervous. And when I came out of breakfast, I noticed that the room where we were going to be doing our talks was being set up. So I popped in and asked the staff if I could possibly stand up on stage and do a bit of a run through of my talk. And I actually gave my whole presentation to the room staff. What was lovely was that it really helped me get used to the room. And they sat down halfway through my talk and were listening, and even gave me a bit of an applause at the end. So by the time I actually did it later that morning, it's like, oh, I've already done this once, it's fine. And I'm going to talk a little bit about actual rehearsal in a moment or two. My biggest talk was also exciting because I wasn't expecting it. I was speaking at an international conference, not HypnoThoughts, a different one, in London, and I was expecting to be in a breakout room. So in my mind, I had 300 people. That's all that they take. And I turned up on the Monday, and my talk was on a Tuesday. I turned up on the Monday. I said, oh no, we've decided we're going to put your talk on the main stage. I'm thinking, okay, that's going to be about 1,000 people. My handouts aren't going to work because there's 6 entrances into this particular big hall. So I changed my slides overnight, put all the relevant information onto the slides appropriately, and turned up extra early the next morning, gave to IT my USB stick with the new presentation, checked the system that it was live, went in to do my talk, first slide up, and I thought, oh, it's the wrong presentation. So I gave the whole audience magnetic fingers to do, if you're familiar with it, just because I needed them to do something for 5 minutes. Well, I very hurriedly said to one of the organisers, please could you ask IT to change it to the correct presentation? He came back just before the end of the practical, waved at me, and I thought, well, what does that mean? Does it mean yes? Does it mean no? Who knows? Luckily, when I clicked onto the next slide, all was well. So it just goes to show that it really does pay not only to be prepared, but to be prepared for what might go slightly off plan. Talking of preparation, I did a little bit of Googling for statistics earlier today. And according to the American Management Association, their top 9 things that irritate people that they suggest you would never do in a presentation, 37% of people find it really terrible if the presenter reads the presentation. Now, I was at a conference last week, and it was a really good, interesting conference, although all but one speaker read almost word for word from the slides. Now, we as humans can read those slides quicker than most people can say them, and it's a really easy way of getting your audience to switch off. My top tip, if you are going to use slides, and I'm going to cover those a bit further on as well, is to create prompts and just learn your prompts, even if you have them on a bit of paper, super big font size, so that you know that those 2 words or 3 words are enough to give you a whole section of information. There is no need to learn it word perfectly, because very few of us speak word perfectly. I'm sure I've fluffed my words at least twice so far. It's normal, we're humans. Allow that to happen and you will sound more authentic and certainly more interesting than if you are talking as though you are reading something. It gets flat. So learn your prompts. Apparently 22% of people find it annoying where the presenter has no knowledge of the subject matter. Now, I really doubt that anybody could present at HypnoThoughts without knowing their stuff, because Stephanie and Scott go through everything with a fine-tooth comb, and they're really good at picking good presenters and people that know their stuff. However, it can be useful to pitch your presentation at least a couple of levels into your comfort zone. So rather than right to the edge of your knowledge, have room for expansion. So if somebody does ask a tricky question, you've got more in the tank that you haven't already given. The next one, apparently 16% of people get annoyed when the presenter uses too many ums and ers. Fillers are really common. I was at a university talk a few years ago, and this lovely lecturer turned up. And within the first 5 minutes, all of us were fascinated by what she was saying, because there were so many ers and ums. Afterwards, we hadn't a clue what she said. We were just focusing on the ers and ums. In fact, there was actually a poll the following week to see who had the correct answer. And I think it was something like 52 ers and ums in a timed 5-minute period. I didn't win the bet, sadly. Instead of an or an just pause. Or my top tip again, have a glass of water or a cup handy and just take a sip. It gives you a good few seconds of thinking time. Another thing is getting stuck on a subject. Now, the time will fly by when you're presenting. It will seem super fast. It will go quicker than you can possibly imagine. Allow for that and have regular changes in what you're talking about, as opposed to having a huge chunk all on the same subject. In addition, I doubt many of you even would dream of this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Think about the skills that you have as hypnotherapists and hypnotists, how you can use light and shade and timing and energy of all different ways to actually bring something alive. Because it isn't just the words that you're communicating with. You're creating images and thoughts and all sorts of different responses in somebody. And we know that when somebody is enjoying themselves, they actually absorb information and learn better. So making it interesting, making it engaging really will benefit not just you having a well-received talk, but the people that have taken the time to choose your talk. Now, hopefully, you will have tons of people in your room. The bigger the room, generally, the slower you will talk. That doesn't mean low energy, but just allow yourself to enunciate that little bit more carefully and avoid speaking too fast. Sometimes if we're nervous, we start to talk really, really fast because somehow we're going to get through it even quicker. But then people switch off because they can't understand, they can't process what you want to give them. Generally, I aim to have a change every 4 minutes and have time built in to allow for people to catch up in their processing of what you're talking about. A few other things: avoid terrible slides. I will come on to slides in a bit. They really aren't your prompts. Have your prompts on a sheet of paper as opposed to on the slides. And do make, if you're going to use PowerPoint slides, have great visuals. And the final thing, and this is something that very few people seem to do, but it can really make a huge difference, not just to how comfortable you feel in the room, but how connected your audience can feel. And what I suggest you do when you're there, when you start to present, divide the room in your mind up into quadrants or sections and pick a friendly face in the middle of each section. And then, as you look around the room, make eye contact with that friendly face. Those people around them will feel that you're also making eye contact with them. And it helps people feel that you're not talking at them, but you're talking with them. So those were just some of the things that I learned from having a look at those statistics from the American Management Association. But let's start with a little bit more information about preparing. And the first thing is about preparing you. And this isn't about what clothes you're going to wear, although I strongly recommend comfortable clothes that you've worn before, comfortable shoes. Not like one of my friends who bought the most amazing pair of leather trousers. They didn't even creak. But it was only when she put them on that morning that she realised she couldn't actually sit down in them. So she had to stand all morning until her presentation. But they did look awesome. Really, the personal audit is about what your concerns or challenges are. Rather than avoiding them, maybe sit down with a cup of coffee with yourself and just think, okay, what am I actually worried about? What bits am I avoiding thinking about? And maybe even make a list. Because when you know what your concerns or challenges are, you can take a solution-focused approach to them. Think about the problem, consider what options you've got to resolve the problem, and pick a solution. And it might be that some of it is outside of your control. What if nobody laughs at my jokes? Well, then they don't. And just having that thought in your mind, well, if they don't laugh at the joke, that's fine. I will ignore it. I will just move on. But having a plan really can help you present more confidently, because whatever comes up, you've got a way of dealing with it. In terms of material, it's really helpful to keep to plan. So going back to basics, have a look at what you submitted to HypnoThoughts, have a look at what's there, the blurb that's about your talk or presentation, and make that almost like headers, break it down into sections so that you are very, very clear about what you're going to talk about. There's nothing worse, I found, than going into a talk, expecting something and then getting something completely different. And it's like, oh, that's disappointing. When you've got your plan, I would suggest outlining it first. So almost like if it was a book, your chapter headers. And then you can fill in your bullet points. I would suggest, unless you really want to, avoid scripting out your talk. You'll never have time to do it. And there's nothing worse than somebody reading. I went to a conference, a hypnotherapy conference a few years ago, and it was after lunch. And bear in mind, the lunch was sandwiches. And we all know what a sandwich lunch can do to an audience. It's the best way of getting them to go to sleep. And this lovely elderly chap was the first speaker after lunch. And he came up and he had a sheet of papers and he put up a presentation slide that had tiny font that we couldn't read. And he said, bear with me. This is the first time I presented this talk. And he proceeded to read his notes word for word. Honestly, my nails were dug into my hand after the first 5 minutes trying to keep awake. And it was a torturous 45 minutes. So maybe avoid that. Avoid scripts. Just have your prompts. Good thing as well is to anticipate contingencies. So there may be a late start. Even though the majority of presenters are awesome about finishing on time, something may go amiss. Stephanie mentioned Fleetwood, who are incredible. They are just the best sound guys ever, including my favourite, but I won't mention him. But they're amazing. They really are good. But if maybe something needs adjusting, you might be a minute or two late starting. They might have been late getting started. It could be anything. So build in a little bit of flexibility, a bit of wiggle room into your talk. Far better to give your audience maybe 10 minutes of Q&A time in a longer talk than an allocated 5. It just builds in some flexibility. Do ensure, though, that you can run to time. Certainly when I was first planning my presentations, I had so much that I wanted to share with people. And it was only by running through it in real time that I realized that what I thought was 45 minutes worth of content was probably an hour and a quarter. So plan it out really thoroughly. And what will happen there is that, oh, that's weird, I've come off speaker. Plan it out really thoroughly. And what you will find is that you are then better able to come to time. On that as well, in terms of planning, please, pretty please, avoid data dumps. If you have some awesome statistics or research information, then what I would suggest that you do is maybe have a handout or something that you can distribute, or a link to your website or some other resource, rather than standing there for however long reading statistics out loud or data out loud. I found that after the first maybe minute or so, people do switch off. The scientific conference and the medical conference I was at last week, I noticed this really quickly, and people started fidgeting, and that can put people off as well. Another thing on material prep, I know it sounds a bit like a list, all of this, is avoid winging it. If you are nervous about presenting, one of the most common ways of dealing with those nerves is to ignore it. Oh, well, I'll prepare it next week. I'm really busy this week. I'll do it next week. I'll leave it next week. Yeah, hand up. I own up that once, years ago, I didn't prepare my talk. And no, it wasn't for Hypno Thoughts. It was for another conference. Never dare do that to Stephanie and Scott, I have to say. I did prepare my talk on the plane going over there. I knew it inside out. That was no excuse. I didn't enjoy being that last minute, and I learned from it. So now I will prepare it pretty much as soon as I know I'm going to be a speaker, and then I'll review it nearer the time and just make sure that it's super up to date. The final thing just on this broad thing about material prep is, please avoid being someone that you're not. Hopefully you'll get to come up and say hello at the conference, and you'll realise that this is pretty much me. Whether it's at 8 o'clock in the morning or midnight, coming back from one of the shows, this is sort of me. If I presented as somebody lower energy, very calm, very collected, it wouldn't be me. And it could feel a little bit fake, a little bit incongruent. So do your best to allow your natural personality to shine through, because that's what people will connect with. So haven't seen any questions so far. I am just going to check the chat. We're okay so far. This is good. Next bit that I'd like to come on is all about planning still and creating what I always call a lesson plan or a running order. Maybe divide it into 5-minute chunks and just plot out how you're going to make use of those time slots. I would suggest starting with a brief intro. No, this is me. The wonder of that is that hopefully you know your own bio well enough to launch into that without having to refer to prompts. It gives you an opportunity to, hold your posture, head up, be confident, talk to the audience and connect to people in that audience. If you're the sort of person that has a little bit of a story, only a minute or so, about some aspect of your journey there or something else, it just warms people up. It helps them connect to you as a person rather than just a topic provider. And then when you've done that, it's a good idea, I found, to have an overview of what people can expect, and a little bit maybe of an attention getter. But what I find is really useful is an open loop. Something like, today I'm going to share with you 3 secrets or 3 things that you're going to find invaluable in your practice. And hold one of those back right to the end. Now, there are some people who like to optimize their time at conferences by darting from presenter to presenter. And they'll come in and they'll spend 10 minutes in yours, and then they'll go next door and grab a hand up for that one and spend 10 minutes in that one, and then they'll go to the next one and 10 minutes to that one. And what I found by chatting to people that regularly do that is that an open loop tends to keep them in the room, because there's a fear of missing out. So they don't want to miss out on what those 3 key things are, especially if they're not detailed in your handout, and they'll tend to stay for the whole of the talk. If you yourself are a serial room hopper, always nice if you locate yourself near the doors, because then it's least disruptive for other people. I would say as well, when you're planning your section, your content, have a maximum of 3 key messages and then work out around that. 3 tends to be about the most people can sort of juggle in their mind. So almost you're having an introduction, you're having message 1 expanding around that, message 2 expanding around that, message 3 expanding around that. After each of the key messages, you can have your interim summaries to really check for understanding, to reinforce what you've said, you know, your take-home messages. And you can also seed your credibility with brief case studies or examples. I've given you various stories, and I use them as a way of illustrating the point. You will have your own style, not ever expecting you to be anything at all like me. However, case studies and examples bring something alive. Maybe you're talking about a technique, and if you give somebody an example, oh, well, I use this technique with Maisie. I'll give you an example. I regularly teach the fast phobia cure to my students. And one of the teaching tales that I use with them is I teach them about a lovely chap that I had who came to me on Monday morning. Now, his wife phoned at the weekend and said, look, can you help him with a flying phobia? He's desperate. I don't normally see people at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning because I tend to teach at the weekends, and Monday mornings are good for sleeping after teaching. But I did see him, and she said he's got to leave at 10 because there's a car going to the airport. I'm thinking, oh, no pressure then. And he came in, and I only had him for an hour. I got some information from him. He was luckily a very good hypnotic subject, and I used the fast phobia technique or fast phobia cure with him. And he really engaged with this. I could see the expressions changing all the way through. His car was outside at 5 to 10. He was downstairs and in that car at 10 o'clock on the dot, went off to the airport. Now, normally, we tend not to get feedback from clients, but I did get a lovely email that did make me laugh from his wife that night. And she said, let's call him Michael. She said, Michael said that he had a lovely flight. The only negative was that his boss, who was traveling with him, has a flying phobia. So Michael had to spend the whole flight calming down his boss. So I was thinking, that guy really did learn not only how to cope with flying, but actually how to help somebody else as well. But it's a little story. It breaks up the factual information and people will relax in a story. Again, if you come out of your beta brain frequencies, when you relax and listen to a story, you're going to absorb more of what comes after the story. Talking of that, stories do very well with a little bit of drama and a little bit of emotion. So feel free to add in appropriate drama, appropriate emotion. With any presentation, people will remember how they felt long after what you said. So if you help them feel something hopefully positive, then that's going to help with their overall memory trace of what you presented to them. And then at the end, have a clear summary with a call to action. And with that, it might even be something as important as remember to give feedback. And that's quite useful. I don't know, Stephanie, can people still do feedback on the Hoover app?
I believe they can. I'm not quite sure, but I will also say that we are going to do a much better job in collecting feedback. So we're going to be getting feedback from the volunteers, but we're also going to do, I'm not sure quite how we're going to do it in Hoover, but we are going to have better knowledge on feedback this year.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So it might be that it's, you find a way of asking your audience to give feedback. Talking of audience engagement. Now, not all of your audience will want to engage in particular ways. I am not a stand up and dance type of girl. Some people are. So if you're going to, for example, play music at the start of your session and tell everybody to stand up and dance, there will be some who that doesn't resonate with. There will be some who absolutely love it. And if it's congruent to your talk, then that's relevant. But maybe think about giving a range of options of how people can participate. One easy way of getting audience engagement is asking questions. And what you can do is when somebody asks a question, when somebody answers a question, for the recording, you can repeat that answer. So if I say to people, tell me about your experience when using analytical hypnotherapy. I don't think I probably would ask that, but no, top of my head. And people say, oh, well, I found it gives me this. I would then just repeat it back, because then not only do the people in the room hear that, but somebody listening to the recording will as well. Otherwise, the recording will be weird because they're going to get one side of the conversation. But questions are good. Something that I love doing as well is just to get the energy up in the room. Give people a little task to do. Even if it is just, what I'd love you to do is I'd love you all to stand up, turn around and say hi to the person next to you and just tell them one thing about you that is unexpected. And it just shifts people slightly into the, oh, I've got to think about this. And by doing that, they're raising their energy a little bit. They've come out of maybe stodgy, they've sat in on other presentations. So, what's unexpected about me? And it gets a really good interaction with another person. It's sort of an icebreaker for the whole audience. Getting people up occasionally is really good. It just raises their energy. Being at a conference all day is actually really hard work for audience participants. They can get information overload. So breaking that up with little activities is a really good way of keeping people fresh. Any other ways of getting audience engagement? Just think about how people will respond, how your confident people will respond, your quieter people will respond. And as far as you can, allow for the different personality types for them to feel able to participate in a way that's suitable for them. Talking of participation, group experiences. Always a good idea, I find, to brief your audience on what they can expect and maybe mention any contraindications. So if somebody would be contraindicated from a certain technique, mention that and say what they can do instead. So just keep your eyes open and just relax and let everybody else have an experience. Be prepared for some people to not participate. You could ask the whole room to close their eyes, and there's likely to be some who are still sitting there looking at you. That means that they don't want to participate. Just ignore them. Avoid getting distracted by them. Just let them do their thing and you do yours. Talking of distractions, though, do remember to manipulate distractions. With the best will in the world, no venue is ever going to be soundproof. And just as you're doing some beautiful, relaxing induction, it might be that the group next door are doing ape sounds at the top of their voice. So feel free to manipulate distractions and use those sounds around you to help them focus all the more on your voice. And the other thing on group experiences is to have a plan for dealing with any abreactions or unexpected reactions. If you're going to be doing anything of a therapy nature, it's a good idea, if you possibly can, to have a friend there who can step in to any particular individual that may need a little bit more support, whether it's dealing with an abreaction or something that's unexpected that's come up. And I would suggest, just my personal view, avoid doing anything that has a higher risk of abreactions unless you're particularly confident in being able to deal with whatever comes up, because it isn't just about your session, it's about the rest of their day or the rest of their conference. And if something that you do brings up something that's been buried for a long while, it could unsettle somebody for quite a while. So maybe have a way of following up with anybody that was unsettled if they were. You might also do a demo. Now, with a demo, it's a good idea to think in advance, how will you ask for your volunteers? Are you going to prime a couple of people and have them handy? Are you going to work with whoever comes up? What are you going to do? What will you do if you get no volunteers? How will you deal with that? How will you deal with a non-ideal volunteer? Somebody that you really wouldn't choose to have as a demo volunteer. Demos are a good way of conveying your point. However, do ensure that you remember the audience. I've seen so many presentations over the years where somebody goes into therapist mode and they're solely focused on their client, and they forget or seem to forget the audience. Their voice becomes really quiet, so you can't hear. And the whole energy of the session drops. It might be totally appropriate to the therapy, but what happens is the audience start to get bored or switch off, and you'll get the rustling and you'll get the chatting or the murmuring or the coughing and the fidgeting, and that then can be quite distracting for your demo subject, or could make them feel a little bit unsettled. Generally, I would suggest it's a good idea to avoid long progressive inductions. Having something that an audience can recognize and that you can get through reasonably quickly and get on to whatever it is that you want to demo tends to be better, I found. On that as well, wherever possible, avoid having your back to the audience or the demo volunteers back to the audience. People like to watch demos. It's a really interesting thing. If you're going to demo and then ask the audience to copy or to replicate what you're demonstrating, maybe you're showing a technique. I'm going to be doing this on the Friday with HypnoDo. So I'm going to do a quick demo and then get my audience to have a go and do exactly the same. So there are some things that you find are really important. First of all, before you do your demo, tell people that they'll be having a go afterwards. Then they come away from checking their Facebook and their emails, and they will often pay attention to the demo because then they know there's a practical activity afterwards. After that, it's a good idea to talk about what you're going to demo, demonstrate it, recap on what they saw, and then briefly tell people what they're going to do. If at all possible, it's also a good idea to either write on the flip chart, keeping it simple and legible, write on the flip chart what people are going to do and how long they've got to do it. So timing is good, or have a handout. And I'm going to come on to handouts in a little bit. Handouts are really, really useful. And then afterwards, it's really nice if you can allow time, even for a couple of minutes, just for the audience to feed back their experiences. Now, I noticed somebody popped into the chat a message about PowerPoints. So, shall we talk about slides? Generally, it's commonly accepted that slides are not there as a script. Putting all of your words onto the slides and then reading them, especially with tiny font to get it all onto the slides, is not a great idea. Apparently, there's a golden rule of 5, 5, and 5, which is a maximum of 5 words per line of text, 5 lines of text per slide, and I didn't know this until I looked it up a while ago, a maximum of 5 heavy slides consecutively. Generally, people tend not to copy my presentation slides that I use at conferences because I use a lot of visuals. I don't put up all of my material in words on the slides. I use photos, I might use a cartoon, I might use some drawings. I'll use some visual imagery to support what I'm talking about rather than a lot of text. Text on its own is boring and we can all read quicker than a presenter can present. If you want to put text up, then use different words when you're talking so that people get both, and that tends to be stronger. If in terms of, let me just have a quick look at the chat. There was something there about cables. Where are we? The cables for computers. Even if your venue has cables, have your own. And if you're super smart, have backups. If you're even more super smart, email yourself your presentation so that, and have it on a USB stick, just so that you've got backups to backups. And that's a really useful way of dealing with it. So, we are doing okay on time. Practice is my next bit. You've gathered all of this material together. I would suggest practice, and just a smidgen more practice. Practicing the ideal run through is fine. And it might be that you're an exception to the rule and everything works perfectly. However, it will work so much better if you practice foreseeable obstacles. So practice what life would be like if there was a PowerPoint issue of some sort. Practice what it would be like if there is no volunteer. They all want to be voyeurs instead of participating. Practice what it'll be like if you get a challenging volunteer, and they do exist. I've seen some very strong skills demonstrated by some of the HypnoThoughts presenters when they've had volunteers who've had an off-plan idea of what they want to get out of their session. Also, practice how you're going to deal with questions that aren't really questions. They're more statements or self-advertising. Have a way of dealing with that. And when you've practiced all the little elements together, strong recommendation, a full dress rehearsal. Use all of the props, all of your equipment, all of your presentation aids, put your presentation clothes on, set it up as though you were there. If you want to go one step further, borrow your kids' teddies or your own or anybody else's teddies and have an audience. Run it to the minute. Don't stop halfway through. Run it all the way through. And if you are super brave, and you are capable of being super brave, if you're super brave, video it, because it will make it easier to watch it back and go, oh, actually, I don't like that bit. I need to expand that bit. And what on earth was I doing? Twirling my hair for 5 minutes. You'll find out things that you just didn't realize that you did. When I did my first Train the Trainer course, there were about 3 or 4 different things that showed up on video. I'm not going to mention them, but I was like, oh, I don't. It's like, there's video evidence you do. I learned from it. So video yourself if you possibly can. When you've videoed it, then you can work out what you want to fine-tune it, and really give yourself an added advantage by doing a final run through, so that you know at that point that you are truly prepared, that you've got the skills, the knowledge, the resources all lined up to give the best representation of you and your material. If you're going to go to all of the effort of applying to be a presenter, promoting yourself and engaging before the conference, turning up for the conference, paying for accommodation and flights and doing all of this, then it's well worth optimizing your time in that room. Talking of being in that room, if you get an opportunity, visit your room and maybe even spend a couple of minutes, if the room's empty, not while there's another presenter. If the room's empty, maybe just do a couple of minutes of your talk. Just get a feel for it. Or have a peek in the room and then use that detail for your mental rehearsal, so you can imagine being in there. Now, coming on to, that was all the preparation. When you come on to actually presenting, top tip, wear clothes with a waistband. Okay. Now, the recording equipment tends to clip on. There's a little bit of kit that clips on to a belt or a waistband. I strongly suggest that you have that. Ladies, if you're wearing a dress, or I guess gentlemen as well, if you're wearing a dress, feel free to put a belt around your waist, maybe over the dress or however you want to dress yourself, so that this bit of kit, sort of like half the size of a phone, can clip on. One of the ladies at a conference a few years ago didn't do this. And she was at a very serious conference and she had an elasticated waist skirt. And as she walked across the stage, her skirt was getting pulled down by the weight of the AV equipment. And it was getting lower and lower and lower. And she was so into her talk that it didn't notice. By the end of the talk, we did know that she had pink underwear So top tip, either have a waistband or at least put underwear on, because you never know what you might be showing. On a more serious note, it's a good idea to give yourself time. So be in your room for your talk. If possible, go to the talk before yours so that you can be in the room, you can settle in, you can get a feel for it, you can just work out what that room is, really connect to the room in your own way. And be ready to start 5 minutes before. So have everything there. Now, your notes, all of your materials, your water, your business cards, your handouts, have it all there, ready, be prepared. You can relax afterwards, just be super prepared. And the very moment that you step forward to that front area, we'll call it, the stage, even though it's on the level, you're on show. Your presentation really starts the moment you step up to the front. So bear that in mind, because that's when people's first impressions start. If you're flustered, if you're faffing about, if you're kicking off and making a fuss, whatever you're doing, you're setting a first impression. And we all know that first impressions are quite hard to break. So this is when the shoulders back, head up, put your confident face on and own the presentation really does come in. And it's something that can be practiced. I've had countless people that I've trained to do exactly the same thing. And no matter how nervous you are, you can teach yourself to walk up there as though you are an eminent authority on this topic, and that people are going to love what you're sharing with them. So really step up as you mean to go on. As you're presenting, start to make eye contact. Start to connect to the energy in the room, and remember that your energy needs to be a little bit higher than theirs. They're sitting down in listening mode. You're there to captivate them, to take them on a journey. And that's where you get the biggest impact. I've already mentioned about questions, but just to come back to that, always, if somebody asks you a question, repeat the question and then the answer. It's always good to thank the person asking the question and to check that your answer met their question. And my tip would be never to bluff. If you don't know, it's often far better to say, I'm going to come back to you on that one, and go back to them, than say something that is complete fluff that's there forever on the recording. Why do that? Just go, not too sure, I'm going to come back to you, or it's a bit of a long answer, let's have a chat afterwards outside, and it'll give you some thinking time. Oh, and on that, I'm sure none of you would ever swear, but just make it easy for the lovely people at Fleetwood, and maybe avoid some of the more colourful language, because it makes it a nightmare to edit. And they've got a lot of talks to listen through. I don't know how they actually stay out of hypnosis while I edit them. Just one of my thoughts. So moving on to other things. Profit. How to get the most at the end of the talk. Because if you prepare, you'll know how to get through your talk. Yeah. If you think that you're running too slow, have areas in your presentation that you know that you can condense. Also, maybe if you've been a little bit light on the content, have an area where you could expand, or maybe have a couple of question times instead of just one question time, or give your group a little bit of an activity or something. People love to talk to each other at conferences. If you want to spend 5 minutes of your session, you've got 5 minutes spare. Give people a talking activity to do with each other. They love it. They're sitting next to somebody they may not know, and then they get this wonderful human interaction for 5 minutes, and you'll get a lovely buzz of energies as the room energy raises. So all the way through, keep an eye on time and adjust accordingly. Have that planned for, and you'll find that things go a lot more smoothly. I recommend, and this is only from what I've experienced myself over quite a few years at conferences, avoid a heavy sales pitch. What tends to happen is the moment you go into sales pitch, people switch off because it's like, oh, I've just wasted 30 minutes, and now you're promoting this, so you had an angle, so how can I take you seriously? Think of the quality of your presentation, opening doors, introducing what you're about, and then if there is a sales pitch right at the end, that's the time to sort of say, if you want to find out more, here's a handout. Or Stephanie mentioned about collecting people's emails. You can email people with an offer. Top tip, make an offer time limited. So maybe say until 3 days after you get home, or whatever it is, make it time limited. Handouts are great. They add value and people will keep them. If they keep them, they've got your details. Although an interesting thing that I've just noticed is that, and I noticed this at the conference I was at last week, people are taking handouts, they're taking photos with their phone. And then they haven't got tons of weighty baggage in their, their flight stuff. So have handouts that are clear, proofread, please proofread, and maybe if you're going to have a script or protocol, then have that on the handout and give that out right at the start of the session. Your amazing volunteer might be very kind, as they have been to me in the past, and handed out the handout as people came in, and they're awesome at that. They really are. I've had people running across the room chasing somebody down because they didn't have a handout. So do that. If you have any doubts, and hopefully Stephanie will forgive me for this, ask Stephanie if you need ideas on roughly how many handouts. It's far better to have too many handouts and leave them somewhere so that other people who came to the conference can pick them up than not enough handouts. Again, though, if you've got people's emails, you can always say, I'll email you a copy of the handout. So think again, strategy is always good.
Kate,
yes,
Stephanie. So just if I can hop in, also you do have the capacity in Whova to add a PDF to your talk. So say you want to do, you want to add your handout to your talk, you can attach it right there. So that's always, an option too. And again, there is a FedEx in the hotel. It's more expensive than the Orleans because it's FedEx. So I would recommend, and this is maybe something that, a couple presenters could arrange in the Whova app of, let's go to Staples and go to, the local. There is a FedEx, not very far at all. It's on Hughes Boulevard. And I can I'll put that somewhere in an email to you all. It's not very far at all, and you can go there and make your own copies. And again, maybe you want to arrange a little trip and get to know how your fellow presenters and do a little quick Uber ride to the FedEx. But you can add them in Whova, and you also can print them.
And for non-US people, America has different shaped paper. Just remember that when you're planning your handouts. Something that I found as well with handouts, I believe you can add the handouts at any time to the Whova app, Stephanie. That's right. Yeah. I know that one year I added them in advance to one of the apps, and then people didn't come because all of the material was in the handout. Lesson learned.
That's true. You might want to just add it, right before the morning of your talk or something like that. So that's a good point.
Okay, cool. I think we've already mentioned added ways to keep in contact, mailing list offer, and so forth. You might even say, again, this whole fear of missing out, that I'm going to email everybody in a week's time with something free. People like free stuff. And if they know they're going to get something free in a week's time, then they're likely to also give you a genuine email. Just a top tip there. Do avoid back of the room sales. And this isn't an organizer thing. It's purely from my experience, because if you're trying to sell books or goodies or something like that, either at the front or the back of the room, at the end of your talk, it might sound like 10 minutes is a long changeover time. It isn't. It flies by, getting people all the way out of a room, another lot all the way in. And ideally, everybody goes out so that the next lot of people can come in, unless they're already staying for the next talk. So what can be really good is to pre-plan how, when, and where you can let people buy stuff. So it might be you say, I'm going to be outside here in 10 minutes time, or I'm going to be here or here at any point, so you can contact me. It might even be that they message you and you can meet up with people. So have a plan of how you can deal with that, rather than trying to make change or work money apps or all sorts of awkward things. Stephanie, are you going to be doing a seller's table of some sort?
I was just going to say this. We're not doing a seller's table. We have 3 booths left in the vendor room. So if you would like a booth and you have not reserved yours, reserve them. It's for one person. It's $450 for the 3 days for one person, $650 for 2 people sharing a booth. So just reach out to me if you want a booth. We really discourage back of the room sales. It's distracting to the presenter who's trying to come in. Sometimes it's intimidating to them. So we ask that you either point people to your website to sell. We try to avoid the hallway sales too, because again, people have reserved booths for that kind of thing. Also in the vendor room, we are having the cocktail hour each night. So we are pushing people. We we're calling it the vendor lounge this year, so that we really want to bring people into that room. And then one more thing, if I can just jump in and mention it, we have raffles every year. And if you're new, you don't know how much people love these raffles. There are people, Mark Howell hands me $100 on Friday and buys, all these raffle tickets because he loves it so much. So if you have something that you would like to donate to the raffle, say a book, MP3, a course, David Snyder offers a whole package, things like that. Reach out to me and let me know, and I'll coordinate that with you. But our raffles are big. We do different raffles each day, and our attendees love it.
And I Stephanie won't boast about this, but I think it's the volunteers that do it. They arrange things in the most beautifully shaped baskets so that people can actually see what's in each of the raffle items. So that means that your stuff gets seen for quite a long while. So it's free advertising. Back onto the end of how to get the most out of this. One of the key things, apart from follow-ups with people, is optimizing your learning from the experience. So connecting to immediate feedback, any organizer feedback or attendee feedback, and also your feedback to yourself. So what your first impressions were afterwards. And this isn't about beating yourself up. It isn't about, I fluffed that word right at the start. How could I do that? It was terrible. But it's actually about thinking, okay, so those bits I can work on, I can be a little bit more fluent there, a little bit more prep right at the start. But these bits were good because ultimately, when you do your next presentation, the feedback and the reflection helps you feed into a much stronger presentation each time. So having your own reflection straight away, and then maybe sitting down more formally with yourself a few days later when everything's settled and thinking, you know, even on the flight home, and thinking, okay, what were the learnings from that? Even maybe what did other presenters do that I really would like to incorporate into my talks? Or what did somebody do that I do and I really hated it and it really irritated me? So maybe you do something and somebody else does it and you're like, oh. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to a presentation and ironically, the presentation was on presentation skills. And the guy stood at the front of the room and faffed about and chatted to somebody, one of his friends, totally ignored the audience. And he was late starting by 7 minutes. 7 minutes. And he didn't apologise for being late starting. And he was really flat and really boring. And I remember all of that. And that's the key bits. I don't even remember what his topic was about. It just wasn't a good start. So I learned from that. Again, the moment you're visible to an audience, you're on show. So make it a good show. And that actually miraculously gives us time for questions. How did that happen? So we've got lots and lots of messages. Shall we have a look through those? And if you want to, I don't see any hands up, so we'll look at the messages first.
I think I have answered them all up to date. So,
See, so efficient. Do we have any questions?
Catch me on Saturday afternoon at the conference.
I have a question. Are you able to hear me?
Go ahead.
This is Renee. I'll put my video on. I'm getting ready for a trip here. So I am actually doing a presentation that is just a 20-minute kind of first, you know what I mean? The little 20-minute nuggets. Is there any advice or tips that you can give for preparing for that type of presentation?
I think for something like that, it's about being really clear in your mind about what your 3 key points are and really keeping on track, because on the day, you know your stuff. So on the day, you're going to add in extra words, which could risk taking you over time. So if when you prep, make it 15 minutes, then on the day, when you add in your extra gems of nuggets of information, then you'll hit the 20 minutes beautifully.
Okay, thank you.
You are welcome. I look forward to your talk.
Thank you.
I will say too, right now, we have a couple seasoned professionals who are clamoring for those 25-minute talks. So I know some people have been, you know, a little disappointed with having 20 minutes, but it's such a good time for you to really zone in on what you want to talk about. And we will be, again, we'll be using those as kind of our not application, you know, for the next year, but we really are looking at those talks and getting feedback from volunteers of, you know, how they think they go and all of that. So we really are going to rely on our volunteers for information.
Awesome. I'm just going to go to Desiree before I go to those with their hands up. Desiree, am I saying it correctly? You're asking, you'd love to know more about picking a good demo subject. You'll be doing a demo. Yay, well done for doing a demo. You mentioned the possibility of priming people. So it depends what you're going to be doing your demo on, but if your blurb about the presentation includes a demo, words of a demo, then people will come knowing that there will be a demo. And that in itself is priming people. generally you tend to have an optimal zone, and a lot of the stage hypnotists seem to use this as well. And it's a bit like a funnel. If you imagine the front row, if you've got two columns of seats, the front row is sort of the wide part of the front row going back in a triangle. So it's sort of ease of access up to the front. People tend to sit there that want to volunteer. The people that want to make a quick exit seem to sit at the back near the doors, and the people right at the front and on the edges of rows tend to be placing themselves better so that they could jump up to volunteer as well. It might be that you do some sort of warm-up activity depending on your demo, and then you get an idea of how people are. So even something as simple as magnetic fingers or magnetic hands, or some other suggestibility test, some other type of warm-up activity. They can all be really, really good for priming somebody for demonstrating as well. Hopefully that helps you out a bit. If you'd like a bit more on that, feel free to message me and we can carry on a longer chat on Messenger. So then we came to Daniel had the first hand up, and then we'll go Jason, Gris, and Desiree if you've still got a question. So Daniel.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. It's very useful. So my question is, not only am I going to be a first-time presenter, I'm going to be my first time at Hypnotalks Live. So the audience, do I expect them to be mostly just hypnotists or just anybody, or that's what kind of audience is going to be present in there? And then also, as a first-time presenter, as I was asking Stephanie already, we're going to be using the flip chart. Do you suggest to prepare that in advance or write them during the speech? Because we're going to have 20-25 minutes, right? So what is your suggestion about using a flip chart and markers during the presentation?
So audience,
instead of, okay, go ahead.
The audience I found, everybody's at a different place of their journey. There are some people, surprisingly, who've never been hypnotized, don't know anything about hypnosis. They've heard about the conference, they come along to see if it's something for them. There's people all the way through, and I have no idea how old our oldest participant is, but there'll probably be people there that have been doing this for 50 years or more. Wouldn't surprise me at all. And no, that isn't me. Not quite yet anyway. But people will have all different sorts of abilities. So it is very, very varied. Most people there have a knowledge, whether they're a hobbyist or a part-timer or a full-timer. They might be a therapist. They might use hypnosis as part of their job, or they might be a performer of some sort. So that's very varied. My top tip with a flip chart, if you're doing a short presentation, is if you can, and you've got some flip chart paper, you could very lightly write it out in pencil that you can see, and then you've got a reminder for writing over the top. Or if it doesn't need to be interactive in that you create it in the moment, you could have it prepared, because then you're not having your back to the audience. So being able to stick it up works really well.
I answered that in the chat and said too, if it's something that you're very worried about, you might want to get your own flip chart and bring it. I always say, if something's super important to you, bring it yourself. And I don't mean that rude at all. but if it's very important to you, then I would suggest you get your own flip chart. And if you decide that you want to write it all out in your room and bring it with you, because things walk away from the rooms all the time. And what will probably happen is somebody gets that flip chart, walks away with it. David Snyder brought his own whiteboard, and people decided to write on it with permanent marker because they didn't realize that it was his. And so if it's really important to you, bring it prior.
I
And
was practicing doing my presentation at Toastmaster using slides and PowerPoints, but since we're not allowed to do that for as first-time presenters, I will probably use the flip chart. So if I decide to prepare that in advance, what will be the size of the flip chart that I need to get?
The standard size, I can look it up and put it in the chat, but there's a standard size. And
Perfect.
I can put that up in the chat. You'll have an easel there. And then if you know, so yeah, this year one of the changes is that we have to use the hotel AV. And so we had to make some changes because, you know, the AV would be more than the conference.
ooh.
Thank you.
Yes.
If you're going to use your own flip chart taper, see these little bulldog clips. Bring some of those, because then you can clip them, your flip chart paper, easily to whatever's already up there. Also, with your flip chart, make sure that you can see it right from the back of the room. Better to have 10 sheets that you whiz through rather than cramming it into one. People will take photos of your flip chart, so making it very clear will be helpful. And if you have a short, email address, put it at the bottom of each sheet so that when people take photos, if they need to, they can email you with any questions. So, oh, go on.
I want to answer Jason and everybody else's questions, but real quick too, I did get a question about filming your talk, and you can film your talk as long as it isn't a big production. So you want your friend to videotape your talk on your iPhone or something like that, that's okay. The hotel will step in if you've got a crew, you know, or something like that. So the Fleetwood is audio only, and if you want to do a video, you can do a basic thing.
Okay, thank you. Jason, Gris, and we've also got Paul as well. So Jason, over to you.
Yes, thank you. This question may be more for Stephanie. It's about the logistics for the first-time presenters. On the HypnoThoughts website, it says the timing for my slot, for example, says 9 o'clock to 9:50. And then at the top of the column, it says 30 minutes. So I'm just wondering, what is like our actual length that will be on to talk?
So there should be two names in your slot, and you would have the 20 those are the 25-minute talks. So there should be two names. If there's not, it's that we had to move somebody, or they had to drop out. And also within 2 days, we will be updating the schedule. People have changed their talks. Some people have been moved around, all of that. And it's not fun to change the online schedule. So we try to bundle it for Scott King, who does a wonderful job on our website. That will be updated within 2 days. I'm working on that this afternoon. The other thing is Whova is the most up to date, because I usually instantly change that. So if you have questions, Whova is the best place to know exactly what that is.
Okay, and you say 20 to 25 minutes?
It's 25 minutes. 25 minutes. Because
Okay.
they're 30-minute blocks. So 25 minutes is basically what you have.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So,
Thank you. Good to see you.
Gris, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Well, my question is, Stephanie already mentioned about the room. I know one, and that's only a feature. My other question was about the capacity for this room. It's like 50, or how many seats are available for them?
Most rooms are between 50 and 75. I believe those rooms are 75. Remember that we do have about 13 rooms going at one time, 600 people. I would plan really for 50, maybe. It was what I would plan for. More.
Okay.
What I found is that if you do a really good talk, people will come up to you and say, I'm so sorry that I missed your talk. Have you got a copy of the handout? And it's so nice to be able to give people a copy of the handout. So if you can have a few extra, and it's nice to be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go to Paul next, and then Desiree, if you've still got a question, we can come to you. So Paul, wherever you are, feel free to ask a question.
Quick logistics question. So when I had submitted, I'm a first-time submitter as well. When I wrote my description, I really wanted it to be descriptive of what people could expect. And when I submitted for a 2-hour presentation. So in my description of stuff, I say, by the end, you will learn this, 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 and this. And there's just no way I'm going to do that in 20 minutes. So I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but I also don't want to highlight the fact that, oh, you're not going to get as much out of this as I originally thought.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts about how to manage that?
Well, you can change the description under your talk in Whova.
Okay.
And if you do that within the next 2 days, it will be updated correctly on the website.
Okay.
So that's the best answer, is just to edit that.
Yeah. Okay.
We
Awesome.
get so many, we get so many that we try to tell people, submit what you want to be seen too.
Yeah.
So I've had a couple presenters be like, I wrote something in there just for you and and we probably read it in September, but when I'm, copying and pasting, well, actually I didn't even do it. Alice did, copying and pasting into the Whova app, that's what you got. Be mindful.
Yeah,
everybody read your descriptions.
Yeah, I wrote mine for the end audience, but I'm used to giving presentations in graduate schools and stuff where they're 3 hours long. So I thought 2 hours is good, but 20 is going to be really tough. So, okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Desiree.
Hi, yes, I'm the other Desiree, or I'm Desiree, like the thing. But because this is the only time I'll admit I'm probably older than the first Desiree that spoke. Anyway, so my question, actually, parts of it got answered with the last 2 questions, which is very helpful. I too submitted for something that could be an hour to 2 hours, but I've given the talk before and had it timed out for an hour. So more of a opinion question. Mine was informational and background, blah, 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 right? But then it was going to have an experiential for the whole class. So something's going to have to get chopped out a little bit there. And I'm right now thinking to kind of cut back on both. I'll have a handout, but any opinion on, is it better to have more experiential or more informational? And this is a, it's a sigils, creating sigils and in a hypnotic process and creating a powerful intention symbol to use. So
with the experience, will people have a learning from the experience?
Yes, and potentially use it for themselves. Yes.
So it could be, because it's harder to deliver an experience remotely. You could do a recording or a video, but it's not the same as the energy of being all there together and asking you questions afterwards, or coming up and seeing you in the bar and go, oh, that I've got a question. Yeah. So maybe if you could have a handout or some resources with the information that you would like to convey and have an awesome experience.
Okay.
People will connect to and learn more from that, probably, as long as they understand the context of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Then that would be my recommendation. Give them something because then they get you time. The information they can read themselves, but to get your take on this and their experience, I think would be stronger.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that feedback. Appreciate it. And thanks for your time too. And you too, Stephanie. Thanks.
Welcome. So any other questions, or have we worn them all out? They're all smiling. Well, the ones I can see are smiling, so that's a good start. Well, I think we are there. We have gone over ever so slightly by 4 minutes. Oh, we haven't got a volunteer holding up they hold up signs. I think, they used to. Do they still hold up signs?
They do. So there's going to be signs to talk more, talk louder, repeat the question. And that's Mariana's drum that she wants to beat, because every year she says, repeat the question. Because she can't go to any of the classes, bless her. So she has the recordings, and that's what she listens to. And so she's like, I need them to repeat the question. So people really do like the recordings. So make sure that you are mindful of that.
Oh, absolutely. Every year that I've got the recordings. And it's, when you're there in the middle of winter and you don't want to go out for classes or CPD, you can just sit there super comfy on your sofa, feet up, listening to a recording. And it's a great way of getting additional information. And it's actually incredibly good value, considering you get the whole conference all over again. Oh, my personal thing, if somebody's just going to be talking at me, I might skip that and listen to them on the recording, and I tend to prioritize the things that I can see. So Desiree, that you'll probably be higher up on my list because you're a little bit more interactive, because we have to choose what we're going to do for our hour each hour. So choose wisely, I would say. There will be a recording of this available. Wonderful. Stephanie will organise all of it. And if you have any other questions, let's say, rather than messaging me on social media, feel free to message me on Hoover, so we can all get super, super comfy with you, Hoover. And I would love for you to come up and say hi at some point on the conference. I'm getting there early and I'll be there right to the end. So plenty of opportunities to come up. And if I can help in any way with any aspect of your presentation, seriously, just get in contact. I'm more than happy to help.
And my email is stephanie@htlive.net. I tend to like email better than instant message, because some people like to message me at 2 a.m. I wake up at 6, check my messages, then go into the office and forget everything on Messenger. So I try, unless it's a quick answer, I tend to answer better at stephanie@htlive.net. And I really want to thank Kate. You are just such a joy, and all of you presenters, thank you for putting in your proposals and for doing the work to give such great presentations. We really, really appreciate you, and invite your friends to come, and also book your room. If you book your room upon check-in, you get $100 from Scott and I, not the hotel, Scott and I. $100 will be added to your room for food and beverage around the casino and hotels. So book using our link, and you'll get that benefit.
Ooh, well, it isn't long until the conference.
It's really not.
It's I know. Just like your conference talk will speed past, so those next few weeks will just go whoop. And before you know it, you'll be there turning up at the awesome new venue. How exciting that's going to be.
It's gorgeous. We're going to take over. You're not going to be able to go anywhere in the hotel without seeing somebody from the conference. So it's exciting.
Well, right. Thanks everybody for turning up, whatever your time zone. And I look forward to seeing you all in a few weeks' time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.